Clock in Its Walls is a new family film that is based off of a book of the same name, and it's also directed by Eli Roth, who's brought us such family-friendly classics like Hostel, Cabin Fever, The Green Inferno, and Knock Knock. And this film is about Louis Barneveld. He recently just lost his two parents and now he's orphaned, but fortunately for him, his uncle Jonathan Barneveld, played by Jack Black, takes him in with his neighbor Florence Zimmerman, played by Cate Blanchett. But young Louis soon finds out that these two aren't exactly normal. They're quite kooky, the house itself is kooky. He soon finds out that they delve a lot in magic, and now he's starting to get invested into the magic world, and all three of these guys are going to have to team up and try to take down a new evil magician that's rising up. I was quite curious to see this film. The fact that it's made by Amblin Entertainment already piqued my interest a bit more, and this movie also piqued my interest since it is Eli Roth making it, and that was the weirdest part about it to me. Like, it's a like family-friendly horror-esque, but not entirely a horror movie, so that was really weird. It was going to be really interesting to see how he transitions from that to whimsical, family-friendly movie. And Eli Roth did a very solid job directing this film. There's actually a lot of great world-building in this film, all of the magic stuff. Just me personally as a viewer, I was really enticed by that, and I wanted to learn more about it. Hard to escape that feeling since every single shot in the movie has something magic-related in it that you just want to see more of, or you're just fascinated by. It also helps that there's a great little whimsical musical score in there. It's like a John Williams-esque whimsy kind of score that was actually quite great to listen to. I think they did a really good job with the music in this film. So I'd say it's hard not to get immediately interested in this film, especially since the movie opens with the classic Universal logo and the classic Amblin Entertainment logo as well. Like, that already kind of set the tone that this is going to be a very special kind of film, and there's clearly a lot of care that's put into this production. Like, it is a solidly made film overall, though. There are some technical aspects that I'll get into later that I found to be negatives, but for the most part I really did enjoy the directing style of this film, and I think Eli Roth actually transferred over from dark, disturbing, gory horror to light-hearted, family-friendly film very well. Another positive I have with this film is the chemistry between Jack Black and Cate Blanchett. These two were on fire in this film. They work off of each other so well. They're the kind of friends that bicker with each other, but there's always that common bond. There's that history that links them together all the time. And when they're not telling jokes and insulting each other, which is very funny and very humorous to watch, there are some moments too where they have dramatic conversations and you're able to connect to their emotions. You're able to relate to them, and there's actually a lot more depth to them than meets the eye. And that was the most surprising part to me, that those two actually work so well together. Jack Black and Cate Blanchett, the perfect pair in this film. I could watch the whole movie just these two and it would be great. However, let me talk about the kid real quick, Owen Vaccaro, who plays Louis in this film. I don't want to seem like I'm making fun of him. I don't want to seem like I'm just trashing him, saying he's never going to have a career in the future or anything like that. But I do think that his performance was just kind of fine, but it required a little bit more. Like, there's certain crying scenes, like, where you have to get really emotional with him, and whenever they do that, I was just kind of like, that's not... It's very clear to me that from an acting standpoint, you weren't really up to that yet. Like, you shouldn't have done this yet. And there are other parts in the film where I was like, alright, he's doing a solid job. Like, he's doing alright at this. Like, he's the lead in this movie, so he's supposed to carry that alright. But then there are also other moments in his performance, other than the emotional side, where it just doesn't really work as well as you might have hoped for. Even certain moments of humor with him kind of fall flat. However, that is another thing that I wanted to bring up, is that the humor is actually quite good here. There are definitely some moments that don't really work, and there's this one recurring joke involving this griffin made out of bushes, and that's a really cool creature, like, that's a really cool effect, but then there's a joke they have with it where I was like, that's a little too much, like, that's a little too childish for me. But overall, there's a lot of good jokes here. There's one in particular that shouldn't have had me laughing as much as it did, but I was cracking up so much, and I couldn't help it. It's one of those lines where if I told you what it was, you'd think, really, that one? That's what had you cracking up so much? But I was like, I can't help it. Like, that just appeals to me. So I'd say for the most part, this is a solidly entertaining film. There's enough humor. There's a lot of unique kind of action sequences involving the magic and the spells and the creatures that show up as well, like this moving chair that interacts like kind of like a puppy dog with the rest of the family, and other magical things like this mural on their wall by the stairs that keeps changing. That was really cool too. There's a lot of fun magic stuff. However, there are a couple things plot-wise that really hold me back from really giving this a solid recommendation. As much fun as you probably could have, and a lot of kids will walk out loving it, I think there are definitely a couple more issues with the screenplay that hold me back a bit. For example, I've already mentioned Louis. Now I want to kind of talk about the school bullies at his school. One of them is played by the kid who's going to be in the upcoming film Mid-90s, directed by Jonah Hill. I can't wait to see that movie. I can't wait to see how he does in that one, but here, not that good. And kind of like Lewis, like he was fine for the most part, but then there's moments later on where I was like, I'm really not buying your performance. Clearly you just weren't ready to be in a movie like this right now. And then there's also screenplay wise, they write him like a typical school bully where people in Hollywood think that young middle schoolers act like gangsters. Like, there's literally one point where the kid pushes someone into the bathroom to beat him up, and he's like, hey, come over here, and he, like, motions to, like, one of his other friends, and the guy comes over and stands by the bathroom door like a bodyguard, just, like, waiting for his boss to get done beating up the wimp at school. And I was like, come on, are you still writing school like that? And yeah, I get, like, this time period is in the 50s, but even then, students weren't really acting like that. Like, they were too young to really get that kind of mindset. I could kind of buy it if it was high school, but this is literally like middle school, maybe even elementary school. They weren't really clear on what their ages were, so that's way too young to be doing that right now. There's also a love interest that's established for Lewis that's really not important at all. Like, it's barely established, so I don't really know why they took the time to include it, but, well, whatever. Like, that's a whatever complaint. Another big complaint I have, though, with the movie is, unfortunately, the villains. One of them is played by Kyle MacLachlan from Twin Peaks, and he's a great actor, but here he's playing a very generic kind of villain, and unfortunately I was hoping for much more there. His plans and motivations aren't anything great other than I want to rule the world and cause catastrophe to everyone. Like, is there anything else other than just your mind is like completely scrambled, like no other motivation, nothing? Like, okay, like a scrambled mind villain would work if they were like secondary or if we knew them from a previous film, but it doesn't when you're just meeting them and they're also the main villain of the film. There's also one thing involving the villains that I called immediately as soon as they introduced it. It was supposed to be a surprise later in the film, but as soon as they started to introduce it, I was like, yeah, no, this is what's happening, and then I waited an hour later and oh, it was so obvious. Okay. So I'd say from a screenplay perspective, there's a lot of interesting stuff that they could have been doing with a lot of the magic and the lesson learning, but a lot of it is actually very rushed. Like, you'd think Lewis is only able to do magic if he's blood related to Jack Black, or if he takes a lot of time, like maybe does some sort of official ceremony or anything, but no, according to the movie, it's like, just read these books and you're good. And then they kind of montage through him kind of learning it, and then he's magic capable. It's kind of like my feelings with Doctor Strange, like in that movie where it feels really rushed as far as how he gets to like begin his magic stuff. It's the same thing here. It's just in this one I think it's a little bit more poorly done, because in this one it's about a young boy, and you'd think a young child doing this, that should be hard, because magic is such a difficult concept to understand, but nah, it's very easy. Just read these books. So this movie overall is just a very fast-paced, lighthearted, family fun adventure with not a whole lot of substance. Like, they don't really spend a whole lot of time delving into the emotional side of Lewis. At least I didn't see it that way. They kind of mention it here and there, but because of the performance also, I didn't really feel it, as well as the rushed storytelling. And as much as I really praise Eli Roth for being able to transition from dark horror to family-friendly directing styles, there is definitely a few technical moments of CG here and there that don't really look that good. Like, I guess I can compare it to Jack Black's other film, Goosebumps, where the CG, for the most part, looked really good, but then there are times where you're like, okay, that's fake, that doesn't really look that good, especially one part later on near the end of the film where I was like, oh dear God, it's the ugliest CG effect. Jesus Christ. It's definitely the worst CG effect in this film, and probably, like, top 10 worthy, like, worst CG effects of the year. If I'm being honest, like, I'm not joking, it's so bad. Not in a laughable way, just kind of an awkward way, too. They're playing it for laughs. It's so bad, though. I'm gonna give The House with a Clock in Its Walls a C+. It has some funny moments, some funny writing, some really good world building for the most part. Eli Roth did a solid job directing it, good musical score, and Jack Black and Cate Blanchett really carry this film. But the lead character, Lewis, unfortunately, because of the actor not being really ready yet, it didn't really work for me overall. You're supposed to really enjoy this character and want to see him succeed in the end, but I just really could care less about him overall. Unfortunately so, because I think the young actor actually does have some talent in there. He just really wasn't ready for some of the more emotional stuff in this film, because whenever they cut to those emotional scenes, it doesn't really connect. There's also some jokes that are a little too kiddie, some CG effects that look really bad, rushed storytelling, bad storytelling with the school bullies and the villain. So really overall, it is a fun movie that you could watch maybe once or twice if you have kids with you or something like that, but I don't think this is one that I'd ever revisit. However, there definitely are ways that you can improve that if they wanted to make a second one, if this movie does well enough, because this is a part of a book series. And although they don't set it up like, oh, here's what's going to happen in the next film, they don't do one of those cliche like book movie endings, there definitely is a story that can be built on here. So that's good. They didn't shoehorn in an ending where they set up a sequel like The Predator. They ended it in a good spot, but in a way where they could probably go off and make another film if they wanted to. So that's good. Like, there's still a lot of care put into making this film, but there's just a lot of flaws overall that hold me back from really saying it's a fun time and you should see it right away. But if you've seen The House with a Clock in its Walls, leave in the comments below what you thought of it. And as always, thank you guys for watching. Make sure to subscribe. I'm Jackson Fulcher. See you guys next time.